He say, she say, we say, I say, hearing out them points of views when I see it my way. Yes it goes, yes it knows, maybe so's, probably not. Shoulds and coulds, do's and don'ts, your wills and won'ts is how you rock. Politicians and religions, on your house or are you renting? Is you married? Is you single? Meta interest when you mingle, turn out to be someone you into. So how long before the bed get wrinkled? Children when they tripping, is it time out or do you whip them? Opinions and decisions, hunches, intuitions, may or may not get it, cause people's experience different. Check the prejudice at the door. Speak the line when you get the flow. Tell the truth if it's sweet or sour, cause the hour we spitting that fire.
Hello everyone, this is Spittinfire coming to you with another one. Make sure you are over the age of 18 when you visit my channel and listen to my videos. I do use foul language. This is Spittinfire and it's not for children. Make sure you do not allow anyone under the age of 18 to do the same. Please read the disclaimer and the description below. Okay, make sure you do that, because all this stuff is for entertainment purposes only, and all these things are alleged until further notice, even though we already know what the facts is. Okay, but if we're not there, we have to protect ourselves. So we're going to get into this Bill Cosby situation. One of the reasons why I haven't spoken on Bill Cosby as I did another entertainer was because the simple fact is, for one, he was already convicted and he had a pending hearing with the Supreme Court, and I didn't want anything that I put out here that could actually hurt him being released. Okay, so I decided to take a different approach into telling the Bill Cosby segment. Okay, now I don't know if I'm going to do a breakdown, but let's talk about Bill Cosby. So we know Bill Cosby, we know him from Fat Albert, right? Fat Albert was one of the best cartoons. I loved Fat Albert when I was younger. I really did. I loved the stories that came behind it and everything else. And we know that Bill Cosby owned it. Okay, he was definitely a very savvy businessman when it came to it. Okay, and with Fat Albert later on in the 90s, years after he launched Fat Albert, okay, from the 60s and 70s and to the 90s, it was a clothing line. Okay, for those of you who don't know. And then during that time when it was a clothing line and they redid Fat Albert, it was a remake. Okay, and it actually became a motion picture that did and made a lot of money. Okay, it made a lot of money. And Bill Cosby was very creative when he did the Fat Albert series. But we also know Bill Cosby as an American dad, okay? We also know him as a really good dad to his children and to other children. And he became America's dad, especially when he played in the Cosby Show. So we know that the Cosby Show ran for, I think, 9 seasons or whatever. And it was really a great show. It was one of those things that made black people and looked at black people in a different light. You know, it wasn't about killing, and it wasn't about drugs, and it wasn't about broken families. It was about upscale black families that we normally don't see on television. You know, they kind of show us in the most negative light ever. But then you have a man that showed us in the highlight. We have a man that showed us that we're going to have something on TV that uplift black people and make us look prominent and professional as the rest of them. We had the Claire Huxtable, who's supposed to be the attorney, and Heathcliff Huxtable, who was a lawyer, okay, and their children, okay, and they had 5 children, which in real life, Bill Cosby had 5 children, okay, and he had 4 girls, and he had 1 boy, which is late son Ennis, okay, who was killed, and we'll be talking about that later on. But in this part, we're going to be talking about his children. Okay, he had Enos and Insa and Erica and Evan, and all of them, you know, Cosby, okay, his kids, for his first and only wife, Camille, who he married in 1964. Okay, and it's really good that we have a black man who actually had a sitcom that run that long, who has been so professional and everything else. But we know that in the midst of him being America's dad, he did a lot of different commercials. One of the commercials that he did was Jello Pudding Pops, and some other commercials that he did as far as the Cosby Show. And then he did some spinoffs where we know about the different world and all this, and he did some stand-up. So if you don't know, Bill Cosby was a comedian. He did a lot of stand-up, and he used very little to no curse words at all. And he actually criticized a lot of comedians who actually did use a lot of profanity in their commentary or in their stand-up, okay? And so in that, being that he did the Jello pudding pops and all these kind of things, we know that if you didn't like pudding pops, you did once you seen Bill Cosby in those commercials with the children. He seemed to be so good. And then he was also the host of Kids Say the Darndest Things or whatever, and he just showed children the light. He really loved children. And so for a person who said they said it's a predator, a rapist, and all this and that, there has been no children come forward. Although during this accusations that has manifested out of nowhere in the early 2000s, from retroacting back to the 60s, they want us to believe they were sitting up there saying that Raven Simone stated that she was molested by Bill Cosby, and then she had to retract that and say, no, I didn't say none of that. That is false. I didn't say anything. They wanted him that bad to where the media and bloggers and all these gossip columns were putting out so much garbage on this man. And it sounds familiar. But people think that his problems came when he tried to buy NBC. They thought that they did not like that a black man with his stature, his money, his education, his know-how will want to buy a network. And I find it very ironic that a lot of these black people now who are being accused of rape, especially the black men, that they won't put their money together to buy their own network. They allow that to be continually ran by the powers that be, as opposed to coming together as a collective and becoming the powers that be in their culture. And some people say they're trying to draw a wedge in the wealth gap. Well, I just think that in order to do that, Black America, whether they rich, whether they working class, have to change their mindset. And also, in the process of me developing this story, Bill Cosby troubles also came when he criticized Black America for not pulling up their pants, lack of education, the parenting and what to buy and the broken homes. And Black America felt that he was actually digging at them and he was targeting them, he was bashing them, when in fact he was giving them constructive criticism. And we as Black America do not like someone rich, famous, and black giving us constructive criticism when we are the culture that need it the most, because we have no cultural obligation. You know what I mean? And this is why black on black crime is at a high. But let's take a look at this.
A juror from the Bill Cosby trial takes us inside the inner workings of a tense jury room, sequestered with 11 strangers, tensions running high. Why he feels bad it all ended in deadlock, and the one piece of evidence that he thought proved the comedian's guilt. Here's ABC's Lindsay Davis.
I've had, regret when we came to the final deadlock decision, and it kind of has been eaten in my mind. This could all be said and done.
Some might call it the mistrial of the century, the sexual assault case against embattled comedian Bill Cosby.
Well, the sexual assault trial of Bill Cosby ending this morning.
Moments ago, the judge declaring a mistrial.
Tonight, fresh insight into the tension and tears from the jurors who endured those grueling 52 hours of deliberation.
You don't really want to be picked for something like that.
21-year-old Bobby Dugan was one of the youngest on the jury. Like so many, he knew the comedian as Dr. Huxtable, the sweater-wearing model dad from The Cosby Show. But after what he calls 2 agonizing weeks of trial, his view of Cosby changed.
I thought he was guilty.
You did?
Yes.
But you didn't always feel that way?
No.
He was one of the 12, 7 men and 5 women, tasked with deciding Cosby's fate, all sequestered 300 miles away from home and divorced from the outside world.
What swayed you?
People's opinions and hearing their arguments and just hearing what they have to say about everything.
But not everyone was swayed. With the pressure building, he says people were starting to go stir crazy.
You're stuck in a small room with 11 other people. The one little thing that one person might do will drive you insane.
And so one of the things that I was trying to tell people during this time was the fact that not only was it important about the jury selection and the age of the jurors, and what they believe in. I've often told you that young people are going to, convict because they believe everything that's said in the media. They believe everything that people tell them because they don't know better. The Bible even said that they would be smarter but weaker. They don't understand. They don't have the common sense to use logic and common sense today. You understand? They go by what people say. They go by what the media say. They go by what that they don't have not the ability to think of things for themselves. And as you said, she asked him, "What's your opinion?" What will people say? You know what I mean? What the people were saying it. You understand? He's 21 years old. 21 years old. And this is the issue that's going to be had. You know what I mean? And then to have a sequestered jury is not about the safety of the jury as the government want us to believe. It's about distressing the people into getting the conviction that you want, especially if you are the government. Sometimes, and a lot of times, it backfires as it did right here when they let him go on a mistrial. Okay, and we're going to be talking about why it was a mistrial because I'm going to show you some more clippings of this. However, it can. O.J. Simpson, okay, jury did a not guilty, and A was also sequestered. So a lot of a high-profile case be sequestered or whatever, but it can backfire, okay? But we need to understand, and for those of you who are young, because even on these internet streets, you hear people talking, and the young just believe it. Okay, they believe that Bill Cosby is guilty. They believe that R. Kelly is guilty. They believe that T.I. and Tiny is guilty. They just believe it because the world is saying it, and that's just what it is. If it's on the internet, then that's believable. And that's how they determine and make a decision. They don't know how to make their own decision on logic and common sense. They don't read things. But we're going to get into why he thought that Bill Cosby, okay, was guilty. And it's going to baffle you. It's really going to baffle you. You're going to be like, what? You make that decision off of that right there. You understand? That word right there. So, and they don't understand the breakdown of this. They don't understand the logic of this. And after I show you this clipping, I'm going to do more of a breakdown on the common sense of what this juror had just said. But keep in mind, he's only 21 years old. And this is what we have to be careful for times to come.
Did you feel like the size of the room had any impact on...
It got smaller every day.
Why deliberate for so long?
If you quit just like that, you could be getting away with something. You always want to be that extra sure.
And by the end, he says tensions had reached a breaking point.
The most intense moment, I think, was when there's about 4 people crying in the room. One was out in the hallway, pacing, visibly upset. They just couldn't handle it.
On the 6th day of deliberations, that jury was hopelessly deadlocked.
I want to thank the jury for their long days and their honest work.
A mistrial declared, and the 79-year-old comedian walked out of court a free man. The jury was told to focus only on the evidence presented, but there's no denying that Cosby's presence still loomed large.
I think if it was a regular average Joe, it probably wouldn't have taken that long.
This trial was particularly stressful for the jury because it had the unusual situation where the jurors were sequestered. It's unusual for a judge to allow it.
Jury consultant Roy Futterman was not involved with this case, but says emotions can affect decision-making.
They may be more or less influenced by their own emotional response, whether or not they're aware of it.
There's nothing to indicate so far that jurors ignored the evidence. In high-profile cases in particular, jurors are very careful to abide by the law because they know the world is watching.
Do you think there's something that could have happened differently to change the outcome?
Evidence. If there's other evidence, more substantial evidence, we would have had a better verdict.
Can you say what one particular strong point was that made you think, boy, he's guilty?
He said himself, I think it was in the 2005 deposition, when they were asking him, would you use the word consent? He said, I want to use that word.
But this
So
replay
as I
today
mentioned
may just be the
prior,
start.
before I showed you that clip, and about how young the juror was that she sat down and spoken with, because we know that young jurors do not use common sense a lot of times, and they don't know how to break down logic and everything else. They go by what they hear. They are often surface level thinkers. Okay, and so he said that they were in a small room and the jury, they just gave up and all this type of things because people don't like to be sit up there sequestered. You know, once you sit up there and you are on a trial and they tell you it's going to be a high profile case and it's going to be this person and that person, you are eager to be on the jury. You are eager so you can go back and have a conversation with your friends about it. But when you have to sit there and listen to testimony and you have to listen to two attorneys talk back and forth for the plaintiff and the defendant, and then you have to listen to the instructions of the judge, and then you have to listen to public opinion, then you have to listen to everything, then you listen to your family. You kind of want it to be over with, and a lot of people get stressful at that moment, and this is why the government want the jury to be sequestered, because they want to build that tension, and that tension can be swayed in one way. It can either be not guilty or guilty, or out of tension. And it doesn't necessarily have to go by the evidence. It can go by the tension that's building up, where people just get under such stress that they just want it over with and they just really want it to go home, as you can hear this juror mention. However, he said that the one thing that actually hurt Bill Cosby and to him to say that he was guilty, because he said he would use the word consent. Okay, so what do you mean that you decided that he was guilty because he wouldn't use the word consent? And they often, and not only did this juror say that it was because of the 2005 deposition, it was also another juror that actually came back with a guilty verdict that said the reason why they came back with a guilty verdict was because of the 2005 deposition. But that jury, who knew that this trial was a retry, didn't take into account of what the previous jurors may have been thinking, and why did they come back with a hung jury as opposed to them coming back with a guilty jury. But another thing he said, getting back to this consent, he said he wouldn't use the word consent. Because when we are out and we are engaged sexually with someone, we don't say, do I have consent to have sex with you? May I have sex with you, madam? Are we going to have sex today? People's sexual life doesn't happen with a permission, as opposed of it being an act of two willing participants. Normally people don't say, well, are we having sex? You know, that's just not a conversation that the government really want us to really act as if we actually talk like that. And this juror, this young one, he's probably a virgin. He looks like it. And I'm sure that that's how he probably would this day. Are we going to have sex? Am I going to bathe my virginity today? You understand what I'm saying? But then he also said something that actually just baffled me, was the fact that he said, that's still the deal for me. But, you know, you just don't know. You know, people are just tense and they just gave up. And that can happen. But why did she sit up there and interview him? Ask yourself this question: why did she interview him? Well, I'm going to tell you why she interviewed him. She interviewed him because he was young. He was going to love to be on TV. Okay? He was young. And he's going to tell all of the secrets into why they didn't get a guilty verdict. Okay, and he told her, he said, more evidence, more evidence. So what did they do when they went back to retry Bill Cosby? They went and got what they call prior bad acts. Okay, they went back and got prior bad acts to testify against them, to try to say this is a pattern of behavior. Although the pattern was not a pattern, because we had people who had all these different encounters with Bill Cosby. Okay, and we're not even yet getting and talking to Andrea Constant. We haven't even gotten to this part yet, and we're almost 20 minutes into this video. We have a lot to uncover, a lot to uncover. And one of the things that I want to talk about in part 2 of this introduction of this Bill Cosby segment, because we're going to break this shit down some more. This is the introduction, but the breakdown is happening right now because we're breaking down why the juror is being asked these questions, why they don't use common sense and logic, and we know that the reason why she interviewed him because he was young, and he's going to give a key message to the prosecutor who want to retry him. What did they do wrong? So when they go back to retry this man again, they automatically know. You understand what I'm saying? I hope you guys understand that and caught that, because I broke that all down to you, because no one else on these internet streets but Spittinfire has caught that and broke that down. No one has broken that down to you. I don't even care. Not even the publicist. This was a setup for his retrial when she interviewed him. Now, this is part 1 of the introduction breakdown of Bill Cosby. We're going to be bringing you some more. Stay tuned. Thank y'all for listening to Spittinfire. And make sure you like, share, and subscribe to videos. And if you would like to donate to Spittinfire, you can cash app Spittinfire. Just like that. Thank you for listening. Peace.